The year was 570 AD, a year etched forever into the memory of the Arabs as the year of the elephant. Mecca was a city of echoes, echoes of the massive army that had just been turned back from its gates by a divine miracle. The atmosphere in the valley was one of quiet, heavy awe. There was a collective sense among the people that the heavens were watching over this ancient sanctuary with a new intensity. It was into this world of shifting orange sands, rigid tribal honor, and spiritual transition that the greatest light to ever grace humanity was about to be born. But as the dawn of this new era approached, a shadow of earthly sadness hung over the household. The child's father, Abdullah, the lamp of Mecca, was already gone. He had passed away in the city of Yathrib while returning from a trade caravan, leaving his young wife Aminah a widow. The child would enter the world as an orphan, a status that in the harsh society of the Quraysh usually meant a life of weakness and invisibility. But in the eyes of the divine, this was the beginning of a journey that would redefine the meaning of strength and mercy for all of eternity. On the 12th day of Rabi' al-Awwal, in a modest stone-walled house nestled in the rugged valley of Mecca, Aminah bint Wahab gave birth. Historians and biographers throughout the centuries record that this was no ordinary night. Aminah spoke of a profound, supernatural peace that descended upon her. She described a light that emanated from her during the birth, a light so brilliant and piercing that it illuminated the horizon, allowing her to see the distant white palaces of Basra in far-off Syria. This was the first physical sign given to the world, a celestial declaration that the child being born was not just a son of Mecca, but a mercy for all of humanity, a light that would pierce the darkness of empires. When the news reached his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, the venerable patriarch of the Quraysh was overcome with a joy that moved him to tears. He rushed to the house, took the newborn infant into his arms, and carried him straight to the Kaaba. Standing before the house of Ibrahim, he lifted the child toward the heavens in a prayer of deep gratitude. It was here, in the shadow of the sacred house, that he gave the child a name that was rare and almost unknown among the Arabs of that time, Muhammad. When asked why he chose such a name, the old man replied, "I named him Muhammad so that he may be praised by God in the heavens and by men on the earth." Following the noble and ancient tradition of the city-dwelling Arabs, the infant Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not to be raised within the cramped and dusty confines of Mecca. The city, while a center of trade, was seen as a place of physical and linguistic stagnation. Instead, noble families sent their infants into the heart of the high desert to be raised among the Bedouin tribes. The desert was believed to be a place of pure, unpolluted air, physical resilience, and, most importantly, the purest form of the Arabic language. It was here, in the vast and silent wilderness, that a woman named Halima Sa'diyya from the humble tribe of Banu Sa'd took the infant into her care. Halima's journey to Mecca had been one of desperation. It was a year of terrible, bone-dry drought. Her own livestock were nothing but skin and bone. Her donkey was so weak it could barely walk, and she had no milk left in her own breasts to feed her own hungry child. She had traveled to the city hoping to find a wealthy child to nurse, but every other wet nurse had rejected the infant Muhammad because he was an orphan. They feared there would be no father to pay them a high wage. But Halima, moved by a sudden and unexplained compassion, told her husband, By Allah, I do not like the idea of returning with my companions without a baby. I will go and take that orphan." The moment she lifted the child and placed him against her heart, the world around her transformed. Her breasts instantly filled with milk. Her own child fell into a peaceful sleep, and when she mounted her weak donkey to return home, the animal suddenly raced ahead of the entire caravan with a strength it had never possessed. Her husband looked at her in wonder and said, "Halima, I think you have taken a blessed soul." For the next 5 years, the young prophet grew up under the infinite canopy of the desert sky. He walked the shifting dunes and learned the rhythmic poetic language of the Bedouins, a language that would later carry the weight of the divine revelation. His body grew strong and his senses sharp. It was during these years of innocence that a momentous event occurred: the splitting of the chest. While playing with his foster brothers near the tents, two figures dressed in shimmering white, the angels Jibril and Mikael, descended from the heavens. They gently laid the young Muhammad down and, in a miraculous surgery of the soul, opened his chest. They removed a small black spot from his heart, describing it as the portion of human frailty, and washed his heart in a golden basin filled with the pure water of Zamzam. This was a divine purification, a marking of the child as a vessel for a message that no ordinary human heart could hold. When he was finally returned to the arms of his mother Aminah in Mecca, their reunion was filled with a tenderness that is hard to describe. But the trials of the orphan were not yet over. When he reached the age of 6, Aminah decided to take him on a long journey to Yathrib. She wanted him to visit the grave of his father, Abdullah, and to meet his maternal relatives from the Banu Najjar clan. They spent a month there, a rare time of family connection. However, on the long and grueling journey back to Mecca, in a desolate sun-baked place called pbuh, Aminah fell gravely ill. With her young son by her side, she drew her final breath and was buried in the desert sands. Imagine the young Muhammad, only 6 years old, standing in the middle of the vast silent wilderness, having lost the only parent he had ever known. He returned to Mecca accompanied only by his nurse Ayman, a double orphan in a world that favored the powerful. Yet, he was never truly alone. He was taken into the loving care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. The bond between the elderly leader and the young orphan became the talk of Mecca. Abdul Muttalib had a special red rug placed in the shadow of the Kaaba where he would sit to settle the affairs of the city. No one, not even his own grown sons, dared to sit on that rug out of respect. Yet, when the young Muhammad would come running and sit directly beside his grandfather, the old man would stop his sons from moving him. He would stroke the boy's head and say, "Let my grandson be, for by Allah, a great destiny awaits him." But this period of stability was short-lived. 2 years later, when Muhammad was only 8, the venerable Abdul Muttalib also passed away. On his deathbed, he summoned his son Abu Talib and gave him a final command: to guard and protect this child as if he were his own soul. Abu Talib, though not a wealthy man, honored his father's wish with every fiber of his being. He treated Muhammad with more love than his own children. It was during these years in Abu Talib's house that the young Muhammad began to work as a shepherd. He would lead the flocks of the Quraysh into the rugged hills and valleys surrounding Mecca. He would later reflect on this time, saying that every single prophet sent by God was once a shepherd. In the long, solitary hours spent watching the sheep, he learned the essential traits of a leader: patience, vigilance, and the ability to care for those who cannot care for themselves. He spent his time in deep contemplation, watching the stars and the cycles of nature, disconnected from the idol worship and the vanity that consumed the rest of the city. One of the most profound signs of his future mission occurred when he was 12 years old. Abu Talib was preparing a trade caravan for a long journey to Syria. The young Muhammad begged to go along, unable to bear the separation from his uncle. As the caravan traveled through the harsh terrain, they stopped near a monastery in a place called Busra. There lived a Christian monk named Bahira, who spent his life studying the ancient scriptures. Bahira noticed something that no one else saw. A small, solitary cloud seemed to follow the caravan, hovering exactly above the young boy to provide him shade from the scorching sun. When the caravan stopped under a tree, the branches seemed to bend down supernaturally to shield him. Bahira invited the entire caravan to a feast, and after observing the boy closely, he found the seal of prophethood between his shoulder blades, exactly as described in the old books. He took Abu Talib aside and whispered a haunting warning: "Take this boy back to his home immediately. Do not let the people of the book see him in Syria, for if they recognize the signs I have seen, they will seek to harm him. Truly, your nephew is destined for a matter of immense gravity." The childhood of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a tapestry woven with the threads of profound loss and miraculous light. He was an orphan who felt the sting of abandonment, yet he was surrounded by a divine protection that shielded him at every turn. He was a shepherd of sheep, being prepared to become a shepherd of souls. Each trial and each miracle was a deliberate step in a divine plan, shaping the character of the man who would one day stand on the mountain and call all of humanity to the truth. The dawn was coming, and though he did not yet know it, the boy of Mecca was being prepared to carry the weight of the heavens.